Before we start, I want to know who attended my panel last year. Please raise your hand. Okay. For those of you who didn't, last year I spoke about my daughter and all her tricky questions. She's 6 now. And guess what? She's coming back this year with a question that may challenge all of us. She's like, Mama, when I grow up, I want to be a writer and an actress. But I also want to be a teacher and a doctor. Mama, should I just be one thing? Interesting. Should we just be one thing? Now, it may sound like a simple question, but sometimes we spend our entire life trying to find an answer. A few years back, I was searching for my own answers. I was the founder of a production house, and everything was good, but something was missing. So I closed it, and I went to search for my dreams in the world of cinema. I was a storyteller who loved business, a strategist who dreamed in images, an Arab woman navigating global markets while carrying the weight of my language, my culture, and my questions. The potentiality of Arabic cinema gave me something I never had before. It gave me the possibility to stop shrinking, to tell our stories as they are, not as the world wanted them to be. So today, when my daughter comes and asks me, can I be more than one thing? I tell her, you don't have to shrink yourself to fit someone else's idea of who you should be. Just be exactly who you are. And that's what our conversation is about today. What happens when Arab storytellers stop trying to fit in? What happens when we produce movies that refuse to soften, that refuse to make anyone's comfort? When I look at this panel, I see storytellers who refuse to shrink. Behind every story, there is someone, just like my little girl, insisting on being seen fully, dreaming without boundaries. And those are the stories that the world is hungry for. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. Gianluca, CEO of Front Row Film Entertainment, a producer and one of the region's leading distributors, bridging Arabic content with global audiences and driving the industry's expansion beyond borders. Ali Mostafa, acclaimed Emirati filmmaker and founder of AFM Films, whose breakout film City of Life helped define modern Gulf cinema and opened the door for regional stories to reach global audiences. Hussein Fakhri, Chief Commercial Officer and Executive Producer at Katara Studios, and he also plays a key role in advising filmmakers and fostering a collaborative ecosystem to support Arab storytellers. Welcome, Hussein. Mohamed Hefzy, screenwriter and producer, founder of Film Clinic, whose work has brought Arabic films from Cairo to global festivals like Cannes, Venice, Sundance, and Toronto, shaping how our stories travel internationally. Hefzy, I will start with you. Looking at where Arabic cinema stands today, do you feel we're creating something distinct or still relying on what's proven to work?
Yeah, now it's good. Thank you, Zeina, for first of all for your very moving intro. I would love to be as dreamful and hopeful as your daughter. Unfortunately, I'm
You're
not
welcome.
feeling it right now. But not because of the state of Arabic cinema, but because honestly, it's. I can't remember a time when, since I've entered, this industry, which was about 20-something years ago, when the people around me were not pessimistic around our industry, or when people were saying something other than, "Oh, we're in a time of crisis." The Arabic cinema, I don't know, I can't speak for all of media and entertainment, but I can speak for cinema because I know it well. People have been saying it's, kind of like in a state of crisis for more than 20 years. So it cannot be that bad, I think, because there are obviously good, there are good films out there that we encounter or we put out to the world every now and then, or, every year you see a surge or signs that you will find this one film that breaks out beyond our borders. And I think that we have been so close for so long, and I really feel like in a way the political situation this year is helping, despite all the atrocities and all the all the really terrible news we've been watching. There are still signs of hope, and I say this across all aspects of our life. Whether we look at our borders and the situation in Gaza, which hopefully will improve, or other places in Sudan, Yemen, other places around the Middle East. The political situation has played such an important factor in turning the eyes of the West, which we all look towards our region. And I think that sometimes from catastrophe comes opportunity, and I think that this year we are seeing some very, very important Arabic films that have tackled political subjects that, due to not only the brilliance of these films, but also because of the international situation and the attention we're having, the spotlight that is on our region these days is really helping these films go all the way, which I would be almost not too optimistic if I said all the way to the Oscar nominations, all the way to awards potential. And I'm talking about more than one film, actually. I'm an Oscar voting member. I'm also in a committee in some other important awards. In the US and other places, and I know these films are in the discussion right now. I know they're in the conversation right now, and I think that's something we haven't seen in a long time. To have more than one Arabic film in serious consideration or in the conversation for awards potential. I'm talking about major awards, Golden Globes, Oscars, Independent Spirit Awards, Venice. These are important awards, and I think that the challenge was always finding distribution, right? We heard stories about how difficult it was for a film like Hind Rajab or the Shireen Dahiba's film, All That's Left of You, and others, especially the ones that tackle the Palestinian issue, or the film, Gianluca, the film you guys distributed last year, the Oscar winner, No Other Land. So these are films that are struggling to find distribution, especially in the US. I feel like that's tipping, and I think what happened last night with Zohran Mamdani winning the New York elections, and I think big round of applause, I think, for Zohran. I think that's a tipping point. I think it's all connected. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's a tipping point. I think Gaza, Mamdani, these films that we're talking about, crossing the line, I think there's something really happening this time, and I'm kind of afraid to say that, yes, this time I am a little bit optimistic. Yeah.
So what do you think has truly changed in the stories we're telling today?
First of all, I think there's such boldness in the creative vision and freedom, and I think that some of the filmmakers that we're seeing out there today are working with less restrictions and with more resources, with not just bigger budgets, but more resources in general, more access to funding, which is not nearly enough. I'm not saying it's enough. We are always suffering from a shortage of funding, from obstacles in international sales and distribution.
That's what,
Yes.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I would like to ask Hussein about the investment point of view. So how do systems like funding, development, and regional collaboration shape the kind of stories that actually reach production? So do they encourage creative risk, or do they end up rewarding what's familiar and safe?
I think you know what my answer is. There's, you
They
know,
need to know.
we have a lot of creative filmmakers obviously out there. I think the issue is the people who are buying this content or commissioning this content are not giving them the opportunity to be as creative as they should be. And that's really our next challenge. We've been talking about this for years, that we have a bottleneck with writing and development. We still have an issue with marketing. Distribution needs to be figured out, no pressure. I mean, we're doing a good job, but we need to be able to create environments for these filmmakers to really bring out everything that they have. And it's not rocket science. In the West, for example, they do 3-picture, 5-picture, 10-picture deals with these filmmakers. We need to give them that kind of comfort and let them work. And I think for me at the moment, that's the single biggest challenge when it comes to filmmakers.
Gianluca, do you agree with Hussein?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest challenge over here, it's not, I mean, filmmakers need to be nurtured, and new filmmakers need to be nurtured. Unfortunately, the only ones that keep on being pushed are the same people, and not giving space to really new voices. And unfortunately, you know, in this part of the world, I think what really limits this boom are gatekeepers. You know, it's people that eventually, at least from what I see, is you know, they'd rather do stuff that has been done years before and formulaic stuff, and to them it's safe, it saves their job. But what really lacks over here is a lack of vision. You know, we you know, like Mo said earlier, we're under the spotlight right now. People are interested in the Middle East. There's been a surge of orders just on Amazon in the US. People are ordering the Quran. They want to know about Islam. Before, you know, people, that's it, Islam had a stain. Versus now, they understood that, you know, they've been portrayed a certain image, and now things are changing. You know, yes, it all started on October 7, but, you know, now people are starting to realize that, hey, listen, there's another world out there, and there's a lot to say. You know, but over here, I still think it's, what really limits this boom is the gatekeeping that is just limiting that, you know, and the lack of vision. Thankfully, people like us, you know, are there pushing, and we'll keep on pushing. We want to change, and you know, we have a lot of stories to tell. Really, a lot of stories.
Yes. How do you see that space or that environment? I hear you saying we don't have the environment. How we should create it?
I think it's with collaborations. You know, whether it's with people like us, and not necessarily with us, but at least like-minded people. And at the same time involving, you know, whether it's the theatrical part of the business, but also the streamers, which is a big part of the business nowadays, that would help any film travel. You know, language is no longer a barrier now that we have streamers. So it's really about collaborations and coming up with a vision which is needed for the region, you know. And I still think that the Middle East in general is an open field. You know, it's still very formulaic, which means there are other countries like this, and I keep saying it. Russia in the 90s, it was like that. They just had like 1 or 2 genres, and that's it. Versus now, it's just, you know, varied. You know, you have all sorts of content that are being created, and no longer just boxed into you know, a certain genre with just certain talent. You know, so it's really that.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes. Ali, from filmmaker's point of view, yesterday I had the opportunity to watch City of Life Continuum, and thank you for that. I left in a no, positively, not just for the film, but how fearless you are as a filmmaker. And which made me wonder, when you're developing a project, do you feel the creative freedom to take real risk? Or do you still sense the investors or box office realities or even censorship make filmmakers play it safe?
Thank you. Well, okay, let's start with censorship. Anyway, thank you for coming yesterday. It was, yeah, anyway. So basically, I made City of Life Part 1 17 years ago. And 17 years ago, we had a very different kind of censorship here. And we had something called the National Media Council, which is now kind of switched, which would approve scripts before we start shooting and so forth. And I remember I had this film idea about 3 different storylines: a Western, Emirati, and an Indian storyline, and how their lives connected without meeting one another and so forth. And one of the characters, the Emirati character, obviously, as a drama, you can't just have positive, positive, positive. You need negative to create a positive, and that's how stories work. And so one of the storylines of the Emirati was that he goes through something, whether goes through the nightlife in this world, and never seen before on the silver screen in Emirati, going through that process. And I think that was what the shock was. And the script kept getting rejected. And I think it was about 6 months of me driving back and forth from Abu Dhabi, till a point where they just got sick of my face. And they said, you know what? You go out and shoot the film. When it's done, we will. This is a multi-million-dollar project, by the way, that I managed to raise over 5 years. And when it's done, we will then watch it and decide, right? Anyway, cut a long story short, eventually it had to go to a very higher power for the film to get approved, because no one at that point, 17 years ago, wanted to put their head on the chopping board. They didn't want to give that. And I was ready to, because I know what I was saying wasn't just for the sake of being, what's the word I'm looking for? Controversial. It had a story, it had a positive message, and so forth. So, and also at the end of the day, you can't make films that are propaganda, right? You have to make films that have stories and drama and reality and authenticity and so forth. So eventually, my point of the story is that was 17 years ago. Today, or when I went to, give City of Life, I think it was actually before COVID when I finished the script to get the approval of National Media Council. Instead of 6 months, it was approved in 6 days. So what I'm trying to say is that our censorship committee have really broadened their openness and their minds to different things. But unfortunately, like what I would hear sometimes is that if someone, like there could be places where a filmmaker would go to seek funding. Now, in the funding arena, there would be obviously, the section where they've put people in charge. And the beauty, by the way, about our wonderful city with Hussein Sheikh Mohamed is that he's a visionary and he's able to delegate to people to help run the city for him. And they are able to make decisions on their own. Otherwise, they're having to go back to Hussein all the time. Unfortunately, I think with cinema, is that that's not there yet. Because when you delegate to someone to, be in charge of content, they should be able to follow through with something, correct? And I've heard stories where everyone's happy, they would see a product, and everyone would be happy with the product, be like, this is amazing, and this is going to do well. And then all of a sudden it gets to admin level or corporate level, and they may have seen, I don't know, a minute or an hour or whatever it may be of the film, and then they would make a subjective decision that would cancel out everything that was being tried to create. So everything the National Media Council went to reach in terms of levels of openness dies at this level. So I feel like once we reach a stage of giving the content, people in charge of content, the power to help push through a project, I think we're going to stay stagnant here, really, honestly.
Is it only power or the know-how as well?
It's the experience, because if someone is given the responsibility to be in charge of content, that means they come from a background of it. The person sitting behind the desk might have no idea anything about cinema, but would have a subjective view. That's the problem. So whoever makes a decision needs to at least have a background in content or creativity.
Hussein, are you facing the same thing?
Don't get me started. Yeah, it's a huge issue.
Hussein.
Look, as Ali said, you have people who are making subjective decisions that don't even come from the industry, don't even have the background. This is one layer of the issue. And then the other layer, as also Ali alluded to, is that nobody wants to put on their neck on the line. And we've been banging on about this for a long time. We have to be bold, and we have to be brave, and we have to be doing all these things. And they're just not. Censorship is a huge issue. But my argument is let's worry about that later. Let's get the machine rolling. Let's get the big volume of sort of films and projects out, and then we'll tackle the censorship later. But yes, it's an issue.
Let's talk about distribution, Gianluca. You've been at the forefront of bringing Arabic films to global audiences. From your perspective, how is Arabic cinema evolving to meet international demand, and what still holds it back from traveling as widely as it should?
I think it's the stories and the scripts. See, it hasn't traveled enough over here just because the stories are quite formulaic, and they need to serve this market. So again, like, limiting genre, limiting the stories, even censorship-wise, but it's not just the authorities, it's also the writers. They limit their they censor themselves. It's not, which is bad. Like, to me, it's always, or at least like when we develop stuff, we tend to listen, don't worry, go all the way, and then we'll fix it along the way. Just please be open. But in a lot of countries, there is this innate censorship where it's like, well, I can't really talk about this. We had and I'll always keep mentioning it, but we had an experience with Perfect Strangers that we did, which ended up on Netflix. But the first few writers that we would talk to, they would limit themselves, to a point where you had a gay character where it's like, a lot of 3 or 4 pitches that we got, it's like, well, he needs to kill himself. I'm like, why? Like, that's not the story, And it's like, yeah, but he's just being normalized. I'm like, what is it? We don't have gay characters in the Middle East. Like, I don't get it. So it was a process, or even like, the cursing of it. It's like, again, there is a sort of a double standard in the Middle East. Like, you can curse in English, but if you say the same exact word in Arabic, then it's like, ooh, no, we can't accept that, even on the subtitling.
Even in Lebanese movies?
Yeah, and it was the same thing, but it was kind of a challenge. But if nobody does it, it'll always stay there, So now it's kind of a bit accepted. So yeah, we need more of those. And it's not just about the controversy. It's just about, you want these stories to travel, right? So in order for them to be relatable and universal, you need to be open. It's really that. But again, like, to me, if you have people that just produce and develop scripts to serve a business, then that will never travel. It'll always stay there, and it will just retain an audience. You're not growing it. You're not pushing any sort of boundaries, whether on a script, whether on a level of production. Like, you're not pushing. It'll just stay, Whereas, luckily now we have streamers where you can really navigate the censorship. It's that. If the beginning when we wanted to release Perfect Strangers, to us it was like, yeah, let's go theatrical. Then, okay, COVID happened and so on. But now that I look at it, it probably would have been bans. Like, we did submit it to censors and it did pass. But then again, it doesn't really matter on a script stage. It's once they see it, and that's where the problem starts. You're like, yeah, but you gave me an approval, and to me, I based all my business plan based on your approvals, and they don't care. So this is where you really get hit. But then you navigate it through the streaming world, which, quite frankly, they can't stop. And I think we should bang on that, because that really opens up a lot of opportunities. It opens up competition, even between countries. Like, you see now, like, they're pushing Saudi content because we have more subscribers. But then again, it penalizes Egyptians, which, they have a history of over 100 years. So instead of collaborating, there's this competition, which I think sucks. But at the same time, also, like, the biggest, I think, country that's being penalized is the UAE, because they cannot focus on one single audience. Right? And therefore, this country is being penalized. But you can have creative ways of actually producing stuff over here, which involve all of these other countries, and still make it stand out. Same thing in Qatar, same story. It's just too small. So there are ways of doing it, and I really encourage that co-productions between Middle Eastern countries, but at the same time, co-productions with Europe, with the West, with Asia. And it's going to happen. It's happening. And now in the country, like, it just increases the value of any content that you're doing.
You've mentioned Perfect Strangers. I will add كفر نحوم, رحلة 404, or Where Do We Go Now? These films, they traveled, and so many other films as well. What do you notice about the stories or voices that really connect?
Mo, he can talk about Flight 404, which he produced, but what we noticed, at the beginning, it kind of, just the subject matter of it kind of, raised eyebrows. But then eventually when it was released, and we were lucky enough to distribute the film, it started off as a normal film, but then it really picked up, and that's because it was really a new and pretty daring subject, and that really picked up and resonated throughout all of the Middle East, and because of that, then, it got to travel to quite a few territories. And Mo, I think you need to expand on that.
Please.
How did the film do in Egypt, Mo?
It did very well in Egypt. I was a little bit more surprised by how it performed in the GCC, to be honest. I mean, KSA, UAE, Kuwait was number one for 5 weeks, I think, in KSA in Kuwait, which for me was a big surprise, because up until that point, the distributors were under the impression that it's really only Egyptian comedies that work in the GCC, especially in KSA, and everybody was telling me this film's not going to work, and don't expect more than like this threshold, and it was really surprising and refreshing to.
I love that. It's not gonna work, and then boom, it works.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah. And sometimes the opposite happens. I mean, you expect something to work, and then it does. So some markets are still quite new, and we're still trying to figure out. I think, for example, take KSA, which is maybe the biggest theatrical market now in the region. It's still and you can ask Gianluca or anybody who distributes films, you as Vox, it's still very tricky to figure out what really works in KSA and what doesn't, right? I mean, it's sometimes you get the biggest surprise. There was a Hobal last year, a Saudi film that opened at Red Sea last year, and it's not a comedy, it's not a genre film, it's a drama with set in the 90s, and it felt like a very local subject, and not expected, to perform commercially as well as it did, and somehow it just surprised everybody, and was really making great box office, and also in terms of reputational success. So it's a difficult market to figure out, but I guess the subject of this panel is, okay, can these films travel, right? And I think that really it's on us, but it's also a little bit like Gianluca said, on the gatekeepers that are trying not to take. I was sitting with a French producer just 2 weeks ago, for example, and they were telling me the French distributors just had a meeting with the board that that represents the theater exhibitors, the exhibitors of France, and they were basically telling them, look, we want to focus on Hollywood and commercial and French films for the coming 2 months, because this year has we've been so underperforming that we just don't want to take risks with art house films with international titles that from territories that we know will not make money right now. So there are gatekeepers that are preventing our films from from at least theatrical distribution internationally, and I think also the streamers are very selective, and we've seen streamers that kind of take an interest in the region and then back out again, and I hope that that will change soon. But it's
how can we remove the gatekeepers?
Well, you can't. I think you have to have success.
No, I think
you have to have one or two successes, and then after that they will start to shift, right? I mean,
I think it's more about having like a really a unified vision. It's like, listen, like there is an opportunity, it's an open field. Let's start trying new stuff. Like right now it's with the stuff that's being produced, and the streamers are producing the same things. So again, you're not growing your audience. In order to grow your audience, again, you need to try new stuff, and really, it's there. It's really there. It's just about having that kind of vision and introducing, again, new talent, and it's key. Again, if you want to do a film about young adults that would get you the financing, we don't have young adult stars. We just don't, and that's because we keep on focusing on the same names and the story. That is the main problem. You're not creating new audiences based on that. That's just one example, but there are 100,000 more that we can come up with.
Also with platforms, it's this amazing mind or artificial mind of the algorithm. whatever the algorithm says, we must follow. It's like, what happened to the human mind? Yeah, actually, this works. And that's also quite unfortunate when it comes to platforms as well.
But sometimes you need data, right?
No, for sure you need data, but not to let it completely convince you to say one thing is better than the other.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. Everybody has the same issue, by the way, with the gatekeepers,
Yeah.
who will remain unnamed, obviously. But all the
Those we don't talk about.
Yeah, but
No,
all,
let's talk about them.
But all the conversations we had is the same. I want an Egyptian star with a Saudi co-star with a Kuwaiti story. Why? Because that's what the audience want. The audience haven't got a clue what they want until they see it. I'm sorry, I firmly believe this, and this is what needs to happen. So, yeah, there's an issue with the gatekeepers.
So you feel that the audience is underestimated?
Of course. The audience has a mind of its own. I mean, it's a stupid analogy, but, you know, if it wasn't for the coffee revolution, we'd still be drinking Nescafe at Maxwell House, right? We wouldn't have the V60 and all the other cool stuff, right? We had some yesterday. I didn't like it.
Are there any gatekeepers here, by the way?
So we can talk.
Raise your hands. I have a film with an Egyptian star and a Saudi co-star and a Kuwaiti subject.
So I think we've looked at where we are, what's maybe holding us back, and the chances we have to go further. So let's talk about the future. This question is to everyone. If you could change just one thing to help Arabic cinema reach its full potential, what would it be? Who wants to start?
Hand us a streamer. We'll make it work. I think collaborations, really, collaborations and a unified vision. The powers that be need to understand what the problem is, and they need to understand that this is the only way of growing it. Again, like if you look at the Middle East, we're 400 million. Are we being served? Is the whole 400 million being served? They're not, and even on a country by country basis, again, just because of economics, it's turning into discrimination. It's like, I don't want to make a Lebanese film, I'd rather do a Saudi film. But then again, if you do a Saudi film, it's going to be beyond expensive to produce. And then at least, and like Mo said, it's a very much a hit and miss territory. So like it's risky because like if it works in Saudi, it almost never works anywhere else. Egypt is still the Hollywood of the Middle East. I really think it should start from there and sort of collaborating while obviously growing your local film industry. But I really think it's about collaboration, and the way of doing it is, again, having a vision and eventually making an Arab film. It doesn't have to be a Saudi film, an Egyptian film, a Jordanian film. It has to be an Arab film, and mainly it has to be based on a good script. This has to be the base, and not anymore on like who's behind it, who are the stars, and that's that. Let's go for it. So that's losing a lot of ground now. Like you see it, it's more about original stories, and even in Hollywood, it's no longer about the Marvels and the sequels and the prequels and so on. Like you see, the films that actually make money are the films that are low budget and that have a high concept. It's no longer about the stars. The stars, now you can access stars on your social media, so there isn't any more that glorification that there used to be in the 90s or the early 2000s.
Even in cinema?
Yeah, even in cinema, like you see it, it's no longer, oh, well, I'm going to go and watch a Brad Pitt film and I can't wait. Like I have access to Brad Pitt every day, and it's kind of, okay, maybe not Brad Pitt, but someone else.
Come on.
But do you know what I mean? It's you have access to the talent now, and it's like really the talent that are coming up or like their fame is it goes and comes, and it's quite disposable. So really now it's about the concepts, it's about the scripts, and the more original stories you have, the more they're going to stand out and the more they're going to work. And lately we've had quite a few hits which were unexpected, just because the script was awesome and the word of mouth works, and this is what it is.
Word of mouth is important, yeah. Sorry, no, I was just going to add, because I think Arab cinema, obviously, in their own industry, obviously is working because they have an industry. I think a dream of mine really is that one day, I mean, I would say UAE, but I mean, Saudi's obviously doing quite well for just starting. So I think that's really impressive what they did. UAE, to me, it's kind of like we're there, and then we're there, and then we're like Like I really assumed when the first City of Life came out, like, okay, we're just gonna have a trajectory like this, and it didn't happen. And I think what it is that it's about also telling stories that are quite authentic, and you have to speak about subjects. Like what really excited me actually was Majid Al Ansari just has a film that released now, colleague filmmaker, about a subject that is extremely original as a horror film, but also quite taboo into some cultures. It's about the second wife arriving, and what happens in the house. And I sat there, I'm going, yes, we're getting there. And then I know from a National Media Council level or from a censorship level, I'm like, we are. But it's again is what I said about what happens when you go through the corporate world. So I just hope that like you saw the film yesterday, like it's about also you're able to talk about subjects, but also kind of imply or nuance to still tell a story. You don't have to go straight on and head on with being controversial. And I think there are very clever ways of making films like that, and I hope we get more people to try and do that, because without more films that tell these stories, like you said, kind of avant-garde ideas, people are bored. They don't want to go and see Fast and Furious 34. They want to see something new. And I think with a region like this, we have so many stories and so many subjects, like what Majid did, and to play on that idea. And that's what I want to do when I'm excited to see what happens when City of Life Continuum comes out, because, I speak about a lot of things, and it's been approved, and it's great, so and I'm excited to see where we go now, and hopefully that trajectory is going to rise.
But as a filmmaker as well, how can you balance between authenticity and a story to be commercially viable?
I think commercially viable really is it. You just need to tell a good story, and it has to be entertaining. Number one, it has, and especially if there are two types of movies really for me. There's a cinema movie, and then there's an airplane movie, right? There are movies I watch on the airplane that I wouldn't go to see in the cinema. Right, so that's where you don't really care much. Like you don't mind if you're eating your meal or if you have to scroll with something. And then the films that you focus on. And I for a fact like to make films that you would go to the cinema for. So I think you would need to, obviously you have to make it entertaining and obviously commercial in a way where you think what works. Now obviously with a film like City of Life is, I've made a city of life of the people of today Dubai. Not 17 years ago, Dubai, where Burj Khalifa was not finished, right? So it's for a completely new population, and a Dubai I know, and a Dubai that I feel people appreciate. So when they go to see it, I feel it would have the same, it would resonate the same way it did with the first one, where all walks of life would be in the cinema. I mean, we have a Nigerian storyline, a Chinese storyline, an Arabic storyline, Indian storyline, all speaking in their own authentic languages, by the way. So it resonates with people, and it's shot between international city to the Palm and everything in between, from a laborer to a billionaire. So literally, it's all walks of life in this beautiful city we live in. So I feel by thinking that way is how you can make a film commercial and also authentic.
That's amazing. Hefzy, if you could change just one thing to help Arabic cinema reach its full potential, what would it be?
To be honest, I don't think we need to change anything, because I think the future will take care of itself with technology, with the proliferation of content creation. It's the next great filmmaker is probably going to come from vertical drama, which most of them are going to be not very good, by the way, but you'll probably get somebody who does something brilliant and then go on to make a film that doesn't need to go through censorship and will reach you on your many different ways of streaming, and it's going to take care of itself. But there's also going to be a lot of times where we have to interfere to meet certain challenges along the way. But on the long run, I just think that it's going to be okay. It's also it's a scary time, because the change is happening so fast, and with AI and all of that. And I think it's but we need regulation. You need to also you need to have a framework, an organized framework. In the U.S., there's agents, or internationally, not just in the U.S., there's collection companies, there's completion bonds, there's a world of international finance, there's talent development, which we're lacking here, and I think talent development is for me, would be the one thing that I would highlight, is you really have to work on developing our young talents. Because I think I come from a country where it's suffering right now because of inflation. The cost is going up so much, and I think part of that is because the demand on these talents is bigger than the supply. And so we need to figure out a way of just growing our talent pool, enabling filmmakers to, not just filmmakers, but even crew and all walks of, all fields of filmmaking. I think we need to find a way to grow that pool. So that's it. Yeah.
I sense a hopeful message, Hefzy. Thank you. Hussein?
I mean, you've heard me say this a number of times. I truly believe that we are entering the golden age of Arabic filmmaking. I think we've reached the point of no return. Alhamdulillah. It's taken a while. If there's one thing I could change, is unifying the Arab front, right? Strategically manufactured culture works. We've seen it in Korea, we've seen it in Turkey, it works. And, we've spoken about this, we have 400 to 500 million Arabic speakers. Compare that to Europe, who have around the same, but have 20 different languages. We have one language, we're one people, we have very similar culture, etc., etc. If we were to unify as a block, I think that will kind of turbocharge us, if you like. That's the one thing I would change at this point.
Okay, amazing. We can have one or two questions. Please raise your hand if you have any questions. Natalie. Mike.
Clearly, from the conversations and from the discussions that we're hearing, that you've all been exposed to the West somehow, right? So you've been doing your cross-continent trips, talking to many people, and obviously you're sitting also in committees where you're deciding on the authenticity, good storytelling, all of that. My question is very simple. We've been doing the same. I, as a producer, have been talking a lot to the West about the potential of the region. Do you have the similar sentiment that there is actually a curious appetite towards the Arab region? Lots of curious questions as why it hasn't, especially now with the dismembering of Hollywood. I'm going to call it that because it is getting dismembered as we speak. A lot of these veterans are now getting curious about the region. They're trying to discover whether the region has true potential. Some of them have even come down here, explored the region, found out quickly or not that a lot of what is being said is not reality on the ground. And us as producers, yourselves, I'm sure you're clarifying this conversation for them. But do you think this appetite is genuine? Because I believe that if we work together, even with the West, and obviously I respect a lot about the talent we have, but we still have a long way to go. And we can gain a lot from the West in terms of bringing it into the region. Do you think that this appetite is genuine? Do you think we can steer the appetite into actual dollars and really not worry about the local streamers and supporting our films? And can we have a conversation with them back home in Hollywood or here about convincing them that we've got great stories, we've got great filmmakers, and we will deliver on the promise of delivering what it is that they want, because I think they're very eager to spend dollars.
If I may, if you're asking about Western producers specifically, you're going to see, I think, before the end of this year, quite a number of Western, mostly American producers and studios announcing Arabic projects and Arabic slates. Yeah. So yes, are they going to come and spend dollars? No, they want to come and take dollars. Let's be honest, right? They're not here to invest in us. They're here to take the money.
That was my question.
Yeah.
So they're here to take the money. And not invest in it. So they're not. So they're just expanding their borders into the region.
Look, the audience. They've identified that there's an audience for Arabic content. They've identified that there's a growing demand for Arabic content, right? So there's an opportunity for them to make money. Absolutely, they've identified that. But are they going to come here and plow millions of dollars into making Arabic content? No, but they'll come here and they'll work with us and use our money to make that content, and then we both get rich, which is fine. We'll use that for the coming period, and we'll take advantage of that situation.
On the same note, Hussein, who do you think, or where in the world would be interested in investing, from your point of view, investing in Arabic content the same way that internationals invest in Western or whatever it is?
I've always said, look east, right? The value system in the east is much closer to us. We're much closer culturally. We have massive markets like China, Malaysia, Indonesia. They're fascinated by our culture. I think that's where we should be looking more than the West. That's my personal opinion. Obviously, the guys have
Does
far more
everybody
experience
agree?
than I do with that.
That's why I made a Chinese storyline in the last film.
Can we have one more question?
Hi. When we speak about gatekeepers and the need to have something new, always pushing the boundaries, pushing the envelope, doing new stuff, I totally agree with you, and yet I even go a step further by saying, I usually say we need to embrace failure, and failure comes from trying new things and discovering and so forth. But to be honest, because in my previous life I was on the commissioning side rather than the production side I'm in now, I recognize the difficulties and the limitation always also for the gatekeepers. Whether you are a cinema commissioner or you are a studio commissioner or if you are a platform commissioner, if you do a couple of projects and they do not succeed, you will be held accountable internally for it. And they're telling you...
Well, that's why you need a vision, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then this teaches you to be more safe.
Yeah.
This is why I think trying new things and going out, out of the box, although I hate this expression, needs to be a collaborative work. This risk needs to be mitigated between producers and commissioner at the same time and reaching somewhere that everybody believes in. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I still think it's about a vision, right? Whether it's done by a collective bunch of producers or streamers, which are now essential in any kind of production that you're doing. You have to take into consideration that kind of value. But I really think it's about implementing a vision. So again, to me, it's what a streamer wants is to increase their subscriber base, right? If you keep offering the same stuff, you're just going to get nowhere, right? So you're going to get into competition and you're competing for the same piece of the pie, right? But then at the same time, if you start implementing a vision where you're like, there's a documentary on OSN, so HBO, and it's about how they made The Sopranos and how HBO started. They actually had a vision, and that's how HBO really started. When they started pushing they started off with Oz, but what really defined HBO was The Sopranos, and then from then on, people started looking at, okay, this is like elevated television, which everybody was used to cable TV, right? You guys should watch that documentary, and that actually changed television. Once they had that vision, yes, they've had failures, but now HBO is known to be the HBO that we know because they did that. Over here, unfortunately, we still don't have that kind of vision, And yes, it has to be cost effective. You don't need to start with Game of Thrones, absolutely not. But there are like original ideas that can come up and really move the needle. And there are people that have really original ideas, but they're shot down because they're seen as avant-garde, which it's really not. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, we still have room for one last question. Here, please.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for your excellence. I'm so inspired from Europe, growing up in the Netherlands as a woman of color, being boxed into so many different frames. Started as a journalist, doing that for 20 years and suppressing my creativity until I started writing 5 years ago. So now I'm writing for the region and executive producing as well. In terms of, because I'm about to flee Europe to come to the country because of the political climate and the stories they want to tell about us. So I'm trying to reclaim our narrative and rewrite our own stories from the region. But in terms of being ready from the MENA region as the people you are, the influencers, the movers and shakers, how, and I asked this question yesterday as well, but I'm curious about your take, in how are you ready for people like us from Europe with a vision about the MENA region trying to change our stories? Like, I think I have the best ideas in the world, obviously. You have to be convinced to convince you guys, but are you ready for this new wave of makers and creatives and producers who are, we want to be part of your story too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk.
No, and look, everybody wants to change the narrative. Everybody from the Arabic side wants to change the narrative. All the movies that we grew up watching and loving, that talk about us, talks about it from a Western perspective. We want to show our perspective. That's great that you have your perspective, but we want to show ours. So what you're saying, yes, absolutely. I mean, everybody wants that kind of different perspective, different narrative.
I think also because I think the question in a way is, how would you make decisions about what to produce and who to work with, and if you have the ambition to try to get that work seen by as many people as possible locally and beyond. And for me, I always answer that it's I don't necessarily champion specific subjects or specific stories. I really champion talented storytellers and filmmakers that have not just the vision but the craft and the ability to translate those stories into successful films and TV series. And for me, that is almost more important than me trying to make a film about a certain subject, because for me the subject is important, but it's not as important as how that story is told on a script level, on a filmmaking level, and I think if you tell a story that is authentic and original, and with enough craft and skill and authenticity, I think it will find its audience here and beyond. And I think it's not all stories have to be, about our heritage and our past and our myths and our history. You can tell a very simple story about something which at first may not be all that relevant from your point of view, but then you do it so well. You do it so well, and it's so entertaining and so well done and so well told that sometimes that story could travel more than what you feel is a really important subject, but isn't necessarily done as well as it should be. So for me, it's really about the filmmaker and how that story is told, as much as it is the subject.
Thank you. Thank you to our panelists who made it such an honest and open conversation. And thank you for being part of it. The truth is, I think the world doesn't need a smaller version of our stories. It needs our story that is bold, human, and unapologetically ours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.